Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I am your wonderful host, Noiser, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, The Battle on Biology, Automating Society, and Overwriting Doctrines. We're going to be getting into all kinds of crazy things. Bill Gates and his thoughts on Africa, the Solar Observatory out here in New Mexico, as well as everything else that's going on out here, and more. China's social credit system going into works, it's going live, and much more. You get to hear my rant on Satanists and why I see that as the coming epidemic. There's all kinds of different crazy things going on, I assure you. But before we get into this week's episode, I hope you guys are paying attention to the website. I'm always doing all kinds of different maintenance, all kinds of different things to deal with the traffic as well as the content that we're going to be putting out there for people. Now, we don't have a campaign or something cool that we're doing this week, but if you guys want to go ahead and download the show notes, you get to see something cool. That's all I'm going to say. Make sure you're checking out the links in the description bar below. A lot of people are starting to support us, and we're starting to pick up traction in all the work that we're doing, and it's because of you guys and gals that we're still here carrying out the fight. And with that being said, let's start the show. For tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. And it seems like things haven't slowed down. I don't really think they are, and I think that's the whole point about everything that is going on, to not really understand the depths of what's really happening. People keep ushering in 5G and things like this, thinking about, faster internet speed, being able to get pictures faster, sending pictures faster. It's all, that's the surface level stuff. There's a lot of different things happening on levels so complex that a lot of people choose not to understand. There's all kinds of information coming out about what's happening to us epigenetically, what's happening to us biologically, what's happening to us as a species, as a culture. What is going on? Wow, things are crazy. And I don't think they will slow down. We're going to be featuring people like my arch nemesis Bill Gates in this episode for particular reasons, as well as even the state of New Mexico. Looks like we've been all over the headlines. Things are crazy. And of course, we're going to be talking about the Chinese and their scorecard for citizens, the social credit system. There are things happening that are literally shaping the foundation of our future. And people want to see these selfies. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Factions of Freedom. Just last week we were talking about how it was the 17th anniversary of 9/11, post 9/11 insanity. We're also talking about things like Hurricane Florence. We're getting false weather reports from people like Anderson Cooper. You got that one guy who's acting like the winds are so furious that he can't even stand still, while two other people casually stroll by. But now reports are coming out about farms that are losing thousands of pigs. There's a lot of different things going on in the world. We're no longer talking about the false flag in Idlib. Everything else, the Russian war games. There are things happening. It is really crazy. This is the world that we live in 2018. I hope you guys have been listening to some of the fantastic guests that we've been having on Fellowship and Freedom. They actually do bring a lot of clarity, not only to the times that we are in, but a different perspective outside of mine. It's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to separate things, so we could have a specific show for people who come on and explain these types of things versus us over here doing what we do. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. So apparently Google has the pollution police to patrol streets. Now, I wanted to start this off because basically we're talking again about the environment. We're talking about how that affects biology, how that affects humanity. We're going to be going over things like Homeland Security, talking about the use of chemical weapons from ISIS and things like that. And we'll get into Florence and everything as well. But pollution, toxicity, what have we been going on and on about? Just not this episode, but 2 episodes ago, we talked about how air pollution is making us less intelligent. Let's get into this article from Drudge Report feed. I put this up September 18th. It says Google Street View cars, the global cruisers that collect data for the people for the making of more accurate maps, now have a new mission. And it's one that's sure to make the green groups cheer. The tech company is bolstering its fleet with updated pollution recording devices from the San Francisco company Aclima to patrol streets in Europe and in the United States and monitor fluctuating levels of air quality. And all those findings will no doubt soon find their ways into welcoming regulatory arms of environmentally conscious politicians. Drivers prepare for the environmental regulations. Businesses make way for costly controls. Builders get prepared to pay big for those permits. Homeowners stand ready to pay some more pennies for fuel and electric prices. It won't be long before do-goody governments take the data from these street view vehicles and use it to justify more crackdowns on, say, carbon dioxide or whatever other gaseous emissions they deem worthy of cutting. Liberals already hate America's love affair with cars. Imagine that the arguments they can make against driving and in favor of rail or businesses or bicycles or walking, armed with the latest breaking snapshot figures of pollution levels as recorded during during the city's rush hour. The possibilities for fear-mongering are endless. Mark these words. This is technology that's going to come back with a bite against the average Jane and Joe citizen, all under the guise of preserving and conserving and saving a radical environmentalist lifestyle. Google Earth's outreach division has actually been mapping air quality via its Street View cars since 2014, but the information has stayed mostly in-house. Now in a partnership with California company Aclima, which builds air quality sensors that connect to the internet, and with the Environmental Defense Fund, Google will begin making this information available to researchers, and therein comes the concerns. This research will sooner or later be fed to local and state boards and planners and regulators who will then cite it to justify new controls. Now, why are we talking about this? We're talking about how, again, the corporatocracy, things like Google are taking over. They're defining what is good, what is bad. We're seeing that these companies, they are not beholden to most governments. They literally have more power than some governments. I talked about this a while back in our Building the Matrix documentary. You know how in the future, the lifestyle of America, fast cars, babes in bikinis, and hot dogs, burgers, and all this other stuff, it's being condemned slowly. It is, for sure. Look at the rise in veganism. We've talked about it time and time again, plant-based diets and everything like that, animal foods, and the whole debate that's happening with those types of lifestyles. Now we're having the literal discussion about what pollution does to the brain, to the body, not only to the earth. You see, this is Agenda 21. This is Agenda 2030. What we're talking about, again, is things like the Georgia Guidestones, how we're living in harmony with the planet. What happens, and I've said this before, what happens whenever you literally have to pay extra because you've consumed too much food or your greenhouse gas emissions are too high? You see, what's going to happen with all of this is the introduction of, again, more of that social credit score stuff. How are you contributing versus what are you producing? Are you conserving? You see, there's all kinds of different things to look at with this, but the whole idea behind of reading that, starting the episode off with that, is to look at how they're trying to get us to think in the terms of, what are you doing? Are you affecting the planet? Do you care? People fail to think 2021 is right around the corner. That's only 3 years away. 2030 is only 12 years away. You see, they're putting these things in now. That's why it has to rapidly happen. They only have so long. People keep trying to usher in things like 5G. Look at the world online today. Look at where we're at with just 4G, right? What happens when we start introducing things like 5G into everything? That's why they want your data. That's why they want your information. It's not about just being able to send faster pictures and faster downloads. That's the surface level stuff, but we'll get into that more later on in the episode. Right here, my arch nemesis, my professional nemesis, Bill Gates. He says that that Africa has reached a turning point as the population booms. Now, the last time we've kind of talked about Bill Gates, he's been warning about more superbugs, warning about more biological warfare, more bioterrorism. What did we talk about in the previous episode with all those planes that had sick passengers? The concept of biowarfare. You see, what did we play for you guys as far as what's going on with Syria? Could those possibly be real chemical attacks? You see, biological and chemical warfare are where we are at. You know, a bomb can only do so much, or only does so much, but this type of biological and chemical warfare, that does lasting damage. Let me get into this article. We put this up September 18th. It's from SDHF Plan by Max Labo. It says Bill Gates, who is the second wealthiest man alive with a net worth of $90 billion, has described the projected birth rates in Africa, in the poorest parts of Africa, as mind-blowing, and pressed the need for action. Gates said if Africa's population growth was left unchecked, it could unravel decades of progress and fuel instability across the globe. In an interview with the Telegraph UK, Gates let out his fears of an African population boom. Gates also outlined his 3 principal global health security concerns in the interview. Wow, I don't know how I missed that. The global health security agenda is also very important. I'll come back to that. That has to do with, for people who are unfamiliar, that has to do with basically getting everything vaccinated, getting everybody vaccinated. You got to think about it. These are all just synonyms for population control. But continuing on, it says antibiotic resistance cuts to government funding to improve health in the world's poorest countries, and the unknown pathogen likely to start the next big pandemic, referred to by the World Health Organization as Disease X. Gates is actually quite terrified of Disease X, he warned. Think about this. Disease X. What do we keep going on about? The idea of them releasing a superbug. They're already building the bunkers. We'll be talking about Trump's Space Force and stuff like this here shortly. But Disease X, releasing it. Okay, and I'm not trying to fearmonger, but again, we're talking about biological and chemical warfare. Again, the battle of biology. They have the types of technology to see. They have a race-specific bioweapons. They have these things. Continuing on, quote, "We are not fully prepared for the next global pandemic ahead." Or we are not fully prepared for the next global pandemic ahead of today's publication of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's annual goalkeeper data report, which tracks the greatest challenges faced across the world in terms of poverty and health, according to Bill Gates, of course. Gates spoke to the Telegraph UK about his fears. His concerns is that the poorer people are reproducing, while the wealthier are not. In the report, Gates warned birth rates are faltering in the developed world, while in the poorest parts of Africa, they are booming. By 2050, the 10 poorest countries on the continent are projected to contain 65% of the world's population deemed living in extreme poverty. Quote, "To put it bluntly, decades of progress in the fight against poverty and disease may be on the verge of stalling," he said. Gates did stop short of demanding authoritarian intervention, however, nothing its failures and damages to society. Imposing top-down birth control targets did untold harm in India and China, but he said improving access to birth control and educating and empowering Africa's women were more vital to improving their prospects and their prospects of Africa's economy. So there's a lot of different things to look at that with. You know, the idea that we're looking at global poverty, we're looking at the society change. You know, African population booming. I think that's crazy. You know, he sees that as an issue. I'm not even going to go into the ramifications of that. Bill Gates himself has already talked about working on forms of population control, digital pills, digital contraceptives, to where they literally transmit data to your doctors, and they also make you sterile for X amount of years. The technology is definitely there. You're talking about a man who has literally helped genetically modify the Aedes aegypti mosquito, and then literally like release that to create Zika. There's all kinds of different things going on with that. So the biological warfare that Bill Gates is unleashing, not only in India and China, or in India and Africa, is crazy. And then, I mean, what did we talk about just a few weeks ago before? You know, China's one-child policy, how they're reversing it. Let me see if I might have the note here somewhere as well, but that Democratic congressional candidate, I think it's Scott Wallace. You know, he's talking about how, too, people are being irresponsible breeders. He wants to tax that. The population is booming, right? People are having sex. Things are going on. What they're trying to do is just that, control. You see, if there's more of us than there are of them, they're out of power. But it's to a point now to where they can't control things. Populations are booming. People are fighting back. People are becoming more awake to what's happening. And with that comes some level of responsibility, a responsibility that they don't want. That's why you see so many different disasters happening. You see, that's why there's so many different things happening all the time, from nuclear chemical spills. I mean, Fukushima, Japan just admitted that they had their first death from the Fukushima radiation. We're hearing about chemical spills and everything else. You've got to look at how they're purposely trying to destroy these things. We've talked about it time and time again. American Fukushima, the chemical cocktails, the radiation. It's important. This is why I'm hurriedly trying to find solutions to these things, not only for myself, but for you good folks as well. Let's get into this article right here from Drudge Report feed. We put this up September 17th. It says Homeland Security warns of ISIS drone chemical weapon use. And I wanted to talk about this because we haven't heard about ISIS in a while. I wonder why. Could it be, what's going on in Syria? Who knows? Could it be that Obama's not in office? Who knows? Could it be because Trump and Putin eradicated them in Syria? Who knows? Who knows what's going on, but they're beginning to make a comeback. Let's get into this article. It said that the Department of Defense, or the Department of Homeland Security, reissued for the 7th time a National Terrorism Advisory System Bulletin, which makes note of terrorists' potential to use drones and chemical attacks outside of the group's occupied territory in conflict zones. The NTAS bulletin replaced in December 2015 the post-9/11 color-coded alert system. The higher levels of advisory in the NTAS system are elevated alert or imminent alert. Neither have been used since the system went into effect. Quote, we continue to face one of the most challenging threat environments since 9/11 as foreign terrorist organizations exploit the internet to inspire, enable, or direct individuals already here in the homeland to commit terrorist acts. Homegrown terrorist suspects increasingly rely on technologies such as end-to-end encrypted social media applications to avoid detection. The NTAS bulletin warns noting terrorist groups are, quote, urging recruits to adopt easy-to-use tools to target public places and events. Specific attacks tactics have included the use of vehicle ramming to include the use of rental vehicles, small arms, straight-edge blades or knives, homemade explosives, and poisons or toxins. The bulletin continues. Some terrorist groups overseas are using battlefield experiences to pursue new technologies and tactics, such as unmanned aerial systems and chemical agents that could be used outside the conflict zones. Many of these technologies are readily available. Additionally, terrorists continue to target commercial aviation and air cargo, including with concealed explosives. ISIS units in Syria and Iraq were found to be using off-the-shelf drones to conduct attacks and film attacks, and the terrorist group was also conducting research and development based on downed coalition drones. So basically they're talking about how they're releasing the drones. They're arming drones with all kinds of different chemicals and then releasing them because they know what that could do. That's why you see so many bombings, so many stabbings, so many shootings. You see, a lot of what we're talking about, too, at the end of the day, is guerrilla warfare. These people understand that America is an empire and that they're trying everything they can to try to disrupt operations. Chemical warfare, as I said before, is an attempt for them to really stall things. So you're going to have that being discussed, locally. You're going to have that being discussed internationally. You're going to have that being discussed. And don't worry, we'll be talking about things like these New Mexico jihadis. Could they be involved with some of these terrorist chemical attacks? These are all things that we have to think about. But people would prefer not to. You see. Let's get into some of this post-Hurricane Florence chaos, you see. So while we have all these things going on, fetched to the environment happening, really, really crazy, chaotic things going on, you really have some strange things happening surrounding this hurricane. Some people will say that it's genetically or geoengineered. Some people will say that it's weather modification. I'm not entirely sure myself. I'm not entirely convinced because I believe some of these things happen naturally. But I'm going to read to you guys an article from Mint Press News. I didn't have time to get this up, but it's currently September 20th. As we're recording this, and it says lagoons of pig waste are overflowing after Florence. As the flooding, this is put up by MenPress News, it's reposted by ZeroHedge.com. It says, as the flooding from Hurricane Florence dissipates, North Carolina residents could face significant public health and environmental crisis after at least 17 animal waste pits, coal ash facilities, and the human sewage plants across the state released millions of gallons of toxic liquid into nearby communities. On an aerial tour Monday of pig country, housing the nation's largest hog-producing counties, many anaerobic lagoons or manure lagoons, a human-made outdoor earth basin filled with the animal waste, survived the devastating hurricane, but some were badly damaged, with breaches flowing into local water systems. That's disgusting. Quote, "We don't think it's a good idea for people to be swimming around in poop," said John Rumpler, Clean Water Program Director for Environmental America, a Colorado-based advocacy group. Quote, "It's a pretty serious public health risk that people should be concerned about." 5 days after Hurricane Florence made landfall, much of North Carolina's low eastern region remains flooded and effectively shut down. Bloomberg estimates that the damage from the storm is north of $22 billion, a Keynesian dream for the Trump administration to spend. Highlights from the storm: about 2,200 people and 578 animals have been rescued in North Carolina, and about 10,000 people were in shelters. Almost 322,000 homes and businesses were without electricity in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. 16 rivers reached major flooding stage, with 3 others expected to peak in the next 2 days. Governor Roy Cooper said, quote, "Sunshine doesn't necessarily mean safety." And New Hanover County and Wilmington, which are mostly cut off, opened distribution centers for meals, water, and tarps to supply 60,000 people for 4 days. Daniel Anderson, an Iowa State University assistant professor who studies manure management, told Bloomberg that pigs produce 3 to 4 times more waste than a human a day. Farms then pump the waste into lined earthen pits, sprayed with bacteria to break down, then recycled onto fields as fertilizer. The state has more than 3,000 waste lagoons, according to the Department of Environmental Quality. So basically what they're talking about how is the farms that were left over there, everything that's going on, it's now beginning to leak out. That stuff is kind of gross. But this is also akin to what we've talked about with Hurricane Harvey, Hurricanes Irma, and things like that. We're literally talking about how there's chemicals and there's other stuff just floating around. And whether or not it dries out, it's going to be absorbed into the ground. It's already, people are swimming in it. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm going to play this quick clip, where we have video that shows dozens of people looting a dollar store as flooding cuts off Wilmington from the rest of North Carolina. And before I do, I think this is important for people to understand. There's more of these environmental crises that are going to happen. You see, that's the whole thing. To kind of look at Trump's whole presidency, his whole thing is to kind of ignore reality, right? Or to come up with his own reality. They say that he doesn't believe in climate control or climate change. He doesn't believe in global warming. So what would they do? Supply all kinds of different reasons for him to believe in global warming. Where were all of these natural disasters underneath Obama's presidency? I'm just trying to look at it from, a clear standpoint. These things keep happening, and it keeps giving them reasons to spend. But where are we getting this money from? What's going to happen? And where are we going to go? But here, let's play this clip for you guys where we have people looting this family dollar. I hope you guys prepare. Now, I got family out there, and there's so many different things to say with this. All I can really say is I hope people are preparing. I hope people are looking at all these different tragedies and understanding that not only is it environmental things that we have to worry about, societal issues, political issues, and things like this. What happens? Flint still doesn't have water. What happens if they turn out the lights? Where are we going to go? What's going to happen? Are people prepared? Do we have storable food? Do we have perishable foods, perishable goods, and things like this? These are also things we're going to be starting to carry into the store, because I really feel like what they're going to try to do with the Trump presidency is just that: collapse the economy so that they can come through with this global communistic order, the New World Order, as you see them trying to erect. Realize that the technocracy does not require actual humans. It requires transhumans. But continuing on with this section, right here, the first estimates for the Space Force put cost at $13 billion over 5 years. This was written by Mike Ciandella of The Blaze and Planet Free Will. We posted it. What we're going to be talking about, looking at, again, what's happening with the battle of biology, how this also impacts the environment. Why are we starting a Space Force if we are literally getting pelted with all kinds of stuff here terrestrially? Well, again, as I've talked about, with things like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, and all of these other people, the technocrats, the modern day technocrats, these people, their goal is to create the money so that they can create the breakaway civilization. You see, but before you do that, you have to create a force, an army, something to protect that civilization. But let me get into this. We put this up September 18th. And as I said before, it's by Mike Ciandella of The Blaze. It says the first estimates for the Space Force on the new proposed, or the first estimates from the Air Force on the proposed new Space Force branch of the military puts the cost at $13 billion over 5 years. What are the details? On Monday, the Associated Press obtained a memo dated September 14th from the Air Force from Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson, which called for, quote, a lethality-focused organization with field space superiority capabilities. The president has clearly communicated his desire for a military department for space, end quote. Wilson wrote that strategic competition with Russia and China is the focus of our approach. The memo states that in its first year, the Space Force would cost $3.3 billion. The total cost over 5 years would be $12.9 billion. The new branch would employ an estimated 13,000 people. It would be a separate department overseen by a president-appointed civilian secretary. The department would be, quote, responsible for the preparation of forces necessary to for the effective prosecution of war, and would deal with missile defense. Trump has said that he wants the Space Force to be a branch of the military, quote, separate but equal to the existing branches. In June, the U.S. Senate approved a $716 billion budget for the rest of the military for 2019. On June 18th, Trump signed an executive order authorizing the creation of a Space Force. Quote, when it comes to defending America, Trump told the National Space Council when he signed the order, quote, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have an American dominance in space. He added, my administration is reclaiming America's heritage as the world's greatest spacefaring nation. The Space Force would be the first branch of the military to be created since the Air Force in 1947. What else? If the estimate is correct, it would put the cost for the Space Force far below not just the rest of the military, but also NASA. NASA's space shuttle program through the end of 2010 totaled $209 billion, adjusted for inflation to the 2010 value of the dollar, with an average cost of around $1.6 billion per flight. So basically, we're seeing this, as you see right there. Eminem DJ Production says, "Who is paying for this BS? We are. We're paying for this BS. Don't you know? Who's paying for it? We are. That's the whole point. They want all kinds of different material, all kinds of different equipment, weaponry. The Space Force, right, or the Starship Troopers, as some people have said, the Space Force would cost $13 billion. And the Air Force wants new things. Who's going to pay for it? You're going to pay for it. According to the Air Force Secretary Heather Wilson, her branch of the military intends to grow its fighting force by nearly 25% in the coming years. That would include 5 additional bomber squadrons, 7 more fighter squadrons, 7 additional space squadrons, 14 more tanker squadrons, 7 special operations squadrons, 9 combat search and rescue squadrons, 20 true squadrons that conduct, command, and control intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, 2 remotely piloted aircraft squadrons, and 1 more airlift squadron. Upon more, they're trying to build up their arsenal. You see, they need more things. This is the military-industrial complex. You see, but it doesn't stop there. You see, we've got to understand the world that they're trying to create. This is what I mean by the battle of biology. While the world, as they're destroying the exterior world, you see them creating an incredible arsenal, not only of chemical and biological means, but of also technological and industrious purposes. There's so much more that we're going to be getting into in this edition. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Salutations, my friends. I'm here to talk to you about, that's right, CBD oil. CBD oil can reduce the risk of relapse among alcohol and cocaine addicts, and you know they're trying to flood us with both. According to a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, CBD was proven to have these benefits: relieving pain and inflammation, having antipsychotic effects, reducing anxiety, helping to fight cancer, relieving nausea, treating seizures, lowering incidences of diabetes, and also promoting cardiovascular health. Realized that in 2014, Purdue Pharma received FDA approval for an opioid drug that claimed to help curb the opioid addiction. This will actually help you curb your usage of opioids as well as your reliance upon them. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out. Hey, I noticed you didn't go anywhere. That's pretty cool of you. I actually really appreciate that. Why? Because this next stuff that we're going to be getting into is pretty important, as is a lot of the things that we talk about here. You know, you have to understand that what is happening is I don't, you know, to be honest, I don't understand everything that is happening because it is always happening so fast. We're going to be talking about the concept of them automating society. Thank you for tuning into this edition, or to this segment of Factions of Freedom, automating society, how they're trying to put everything online. I mentioned it in the first segment before, you know, getting the world online, getting us upgraded to 5G and so much more. It doesn't just mean having faster pictures and having your things reload and refresh faster. It means so much more. the information that they're creating is crazy. Let me see if I can get this clip up for you guys where you have them talking about this thing called the selfish ledger, and we might do a separate broadcast on this because it's actually very important and it pertains to everything that we'll be talking about. It's the selfish ledger, to where they're literally telling you and admitting that they are manipulating human behavior through technology. And it's only a short clip, but let me see if I can get this ready for you guys here.
During its life, modified this internal code, and upon reproduction, this modified version was passed down to its young. Whilst not biologically accurate, and ultimately superseded by Darwin's theory of natural selection, the epigenetic theories put forward by him are beginning to find new homes in unexpected places. When we use contemporary technology, a trail of information is created in the form of data. When analyzed, it describes our actions, decisions, preferences, movement, and relationships. This codified version of who we are becomes ever more complex, developing, changing, and deforming based on our actions. In this regard, this ledger of our data may be considered a Lamarckian epigenome, a constantly evolving representation of who we are.
Now think about that. A constantly evolving representation as to who you are. They know that by constantly injecting this type of new information into society, it's changing your viewpoint. That's why they got to mix things up every single week. That's why I have to mix things up every single week, because they know what they're doing. But here, let me get into this article. A European court just ruled that the NSA surveillance practices violate human rights. And this is from the Anti-Media, reposted by the Mint Press News. We put this up September 18th. It says, last week, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that the UK's GCHQ spy agency is in violation of the European Convention on Human Rights with its mass surveillance programs. The court ultimately found that these activities violate the family and privacy rights of British and European citizens. And this assertion ultimately includes a rejection of the United States activities, considering GCHQ has obtained much of its data through the NSA. The suit was brought by Amnesty International, Big Brother Watch, the ACLU, the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, and other civil liberties groups. It addresses provisions of the UK's 2000 Investigatory Powers Act, and though a new version of the law was passed in 2016 and is yet to be enacted, many of the issues that the court identified remain in the 2016 bill, though the court stopped short of saying intelligence sharing between agencies like GCHQ, NSA, and members of the Five Eyes spying alliance violate the Human Rights Convention. It said, quote, using such intelligence sharing to bypass restrictions on surveillance of a member state's own citizens would be a violation of the Charter. Ars Technica summarized, said in a 2015 ruling, a U court ruled intelligence sharing did, in fact, violate European law. The Guardian clarified the ruling, which found some activities are in violation of the Charter, but maintained others are not. You see, so basically what we're talking about is how they violated human rights. The things that they're doing today are crazy. Now, this next article that we're going to get into was picked up by other news agencies and everybody else alike. There are documents that are revealing how the government has secret rules for spying on U.S. journalists. Now, I wouldn't consider what we're doing journalism, but I would consider it a form of investigation. What they're trying to do is just that. They're trying to, and we've talked about this before, how Facebook has their own journalism project, how they're going to be, having authoritative news and things like this. They want to spy on journalists to see where we're getting our information from, how we're putting out things, whether or not we have a bias, if we are just putting out the information as such. You see, everything that we see kind of happening right there is just that. They want to know who's saying what their viewpoints are, where they stand, and everything else. Why are we talking about social credit? Why are we talking about these types of things? Because they need to know who's a threat. This is another thing that we've also talked about in our Building the Matrix documentary, the concept of a citizen threat ranking. But let me get into this article right here. This is also from Mint Press News by Jessica Corbett. We put this up September 18th. It says journalists and free press advocates are responding with alarm to the newly released documents revealing the U.S. government's secret rules for using the FISA Act, which is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, court orders to spy on reporters, calling the revelations, quote, important and terrifying. The documents, obtained and released by Freedom of the Press Foundation and the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, through an ongoing Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed last November, confirm long-held suspicions that federal officials can target journalists with FISA orders. The two 2015 memos from former Attorney General Eric Holder to the Federal Bureau of Investigation lay out procedures to ensure that the Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General signs off on any FISA applications, quote, targeting known media entities or known members of the media. These secret rules, as Cora Carrier reported from The Intercept, quote, apply to media entities or journalists who are thought to be agents of a foreign government or, in some cases, are of interest under the broader standard that they possess foreign intelligence information. Quote, there's lack of clarity in the circumstances where the government might consider a journalist and an agent of a foreign power. Ramya Krishnan, a staff attorney with the Knight Institute, told Courier, quote, think about WikiLeaks. The government has said they are an intelligence operation. Additionally, if they aren't personally targeted by FISA orders, Krishnan pointed out that, quote, journalists merely by being contacted by a FISA target might be subject to monitoring. These guidelines, as far as we can tell, don't contemplate that situation or add any additional protections. Freedom of the Press Foundation Executive Director Trevor Timm noted that while, quote, the fact that these were kept secret during the Obama administration is cause for great concern. President Donald Trump has reportedly stated that his hatred for the media and his Attorney General Jeff Sessions has already tripled the amount of leak investigations since the Obama era, when they were already at an all-time high. So we've spoken on this before. The idea of them, tracking citizens, tracking journalists. A lot of this, for some people will tell you that the purpose behind this is so that they can control information and control perceptions of a country within its own nation, right? They don't want us giving out certain secrets and things like that to other countries, to other nations that are listening. We have an international audience, right? Who's to say people that are listening aren't actual agents? We put out some decent information here. Who's to say that we're not giving out certain gems? And so whenever they're saying that certain organizations would be targeted as if they are foreign agents, that's what they're trying to say. So there's a lot of different things that come with that, and we'll definitely keep our eye on it as things develop, because it's pretty massive. I don't think this is going to be going away anytime soon, but that's not going to stop the work. Moving on right here, communist China. That's right. We're talking again about communist China and its scorecards for citizens. Social credit. They move to control billions through their social credit. We put this up September 18th. It's by Max Lavo. It says, in a chilling but unsurprising move, communist China seeks ultimate control over the population by introducing a scorecard which will supposedly keep the public in check. The Big Brother system will monitor all citizens 24/7 and keep a score of their activities. If that does not sound Orwellian, I do not know what to tell you. But this is what you're getting with China. The Communist Party's plan in China is for every one of its 1.4 billion citizens to be at the whim of a dystopian social credit system, and it's on the track to be fully operated by the year 2020. According to news.com.au, an active pilot program has already seen millions of people, each assigned a score out of 800. That's kind of strange. I don't know why you wouldn't have 1,000, but I don't even want the system itself. Those people will either reap the benefits of having a high score or suffer the consequence of having a low social score. Depending on which end of the scale they sit, their behavior could see them published or punished. The data is combined with information collected from individuals' government records, which include medical and educational, along with their financial and internet browsing histories. Overall scores can go up and down in real time, dependent on the person's behavior, but they can also be affected by people that they associate with. Quote, if your best friend or your dad says something negative about the government, you'll lose points too. The ABC reports the Chinese will be assumed guilty by association and no longer be able to speak out about their oppression. Participation in the social credit system was first announced in 2014 and is mandatory. The government is attempting to control the actions of the public in a bid to reinforce the notion that, quote, keeping trust is glorious and breaking trust is disgraceful. According to a government document, if people keep their promises, they can go anywhere in the world, said Tianjin General Manager Jai Kong. For G, or Jai, it's black and white with no gray area. If people break their promises, they won't be able to move an inch. Penalties for a low score range from losing the right to travel by plane or train, social media account suspensions, and being barred from government jobs, according to Business Insider. This is crazy. They've already stopped people from getting on the trains and buses and so much more, planes, like they said. But what is the point of this? It is, like they said, to control behavior, manipulate what you think of as reality. These people, as we talked about with Google's selfish ledger, these people are fully aware of what they're doing, manipulating reality and society, dictating to us what is normal and real. We followed these types of stories. Again, this is why 5G is so crazy, important. But this is, again, the concept of automating society. Who's a bad guy? Who's a good guy? How can we tell? You see, what you got to think about is how data mining and data fusion, how all of it is it's supposed to advance identification technology like DNA, facial recognition. It's all laser focused, putting every citizen under a microscope, looking for signs of dissent, signs of subversive behavior. And, dissenters are punished, branded as enemies of the state. And don't worry, we'll get into China and then their persecution against Christians, because that's something else. I really believe that people should have the freedom to believe in whatever they want, but apparently China doesn't think so. This same kind of system will come here to America, and people need to understand what that means for us. But let me get into this article right here, dealing again with the concept of things like pre-crime, citizen threat ranking, the surveillance state, and everything else they're trying to throw out at us. Right here, Child Protective Services wants artificial intelligence to predict child abuse. Now that's crazy. You have all of the pedophile roundup going on, the whole pedogate phenomena. Now they're literally, and could this be that? Could this be artificial intelligence unleashed on all the pedophiles watching this type of stuff? Now you have CPS over here trying to use it as well. This is an article we put up from the Activist Post. Put this up September 19th. It says predictive technology is exploding because of capitalism. They're literally, it's a race for the highest for as much money possible to see how they can get the whole world surveilled. For the engineers and the programmers that are working on this type of technology, you got to really think about what's going on, the vertical integration of this type of technology. That's why you see, real quick, before I get into this article, again, to talk about the technocracy, because we're going to be getting into about how the AI workload, they're going to use 52%, they're going to use robots to handle 52% of the workload by 2025. The vertical integration of the technology and everything that we see happening is just that, the automating of society, to where things aren't really random. They're predictable. Their pattern recognition is very, very important. They're getting everybody involved in this type of stuff. But I digress. Let me get back into this. The arrival of big data initiatives by government, as well as a massive industry of data brokers, is not only putting privacy at risk, but is offering those with access to information unprecedented ways of micromanaging our lives. Over the last few years, I've covered the arrival of full-on pre-crime police technology, both public and secret, that is beginning to target potential hotspots for crime, as well as to put certain individuals on lists created by artificial intelligence to identify supposed future criminals. I've also covered trends in predictive medicine that have controversially strayed into the field of mental health, painting an algorithmic picture of people who are prime candidates for some form of potential intervention. These measures are often touted as both humanitarian as well as economically prudent, as health professionals and insurers are able to utilize the near constant stream of information provided by big data. a la, smart pills. This is what we talked about before, digesting these digital contraceptives to where doctors literally have immediate access to your information. But continuing on, it says, what about predictive child abuse? I suppose we shouldn't be shocked when we begin accelerating out of control down the slippery slope. The UK just happens to be one of the world's leaders at the moment for greasing the skids. According to a new report by The Guardian, we clearly see how a variety of social concerns can combine with the, quote, obligation of government to cut costs wherever possible. And this is what I mean. They're going to use technology saying that it's convenient, it's cheap, it's easier than hiring people. We can input all this data, and then we'll send the people out there to execute it, to act on it. The result could be a truly dystopian scenario for entrusting the welfare of children to computers. Local authorities, which face spiraling demand and an £80 million funding shortfall, are beginning to ask whether big data could help to identify vulnerable children. Could a computer algorithm program flag a problem family, identify a potential victim, and prevent another baby B or baby P or Victoria Colombier? Years ago, such questions would have been the stuff of science fiction, and now they're the stuff of science fact. Bristol is one place experimenting with these new capabilities and grappling with the moral and ethical questions that come with them. Now, what are we talking about? Giving over the workload, giving over access to your information, right? What's wild as I'm reading this to you guys, what's wild is I'm thinking about that clip with Tucker Carlson where he talks about those scary Google patents, right? Right. He's literally saying how Google has a patent to to literally have cameras installed inside of your house and notify Google whenever there's some kind of raise in decibel, if there's stuff being thrown around. It's crazy. But this is what I mean by that overarching technocratic system. You see, where they know they have a certain threshold. You see, they have a certain threshold that they allow things to happen, the same way they do with our accounts. And after a while, that's whenever they begin to act. It's wild. But I'm going to play for you guys a quick clip, and then we're going to take a break after it, to where now you have police conducting active shooter drills. Now you have the police literally, I don't want to say they're not false flags because they're letting us know full well that they will be doing these types of things, but you have the police conducting drills saying, hey, look, children have to get used to it. Okay, they're going to be shot at, they're gonna have to deal with these types of things. Why not let us do the shooting? And that's crazy. This is the madness. But again, this is what I mean by automating society. This is what happens whenever you give full control to authoritarian totalitarian people. Let's take a listen.
Scheduled for later this morning at a local high school is drawing concern from some parents. Their issue is with police firing blanks to simulate the presence of an active shooter. Amy Wattis is live with the details on that drill and some concerns from parents. Heather, this active shooter drill is scheduled to take place during an extended third period class here at Bethel Park High School today. Now, as part of the training, the police will be firing blanks to expose everyone to the sound of gunfire in the building, but there's some parents that don't feel comfortable with that idea. Both school police and Bethel Park police will be conducting the exercise, and real bullets will not be used. This training is all part of a program called Alice. Some parents contacted KDKA saying they were concerned about blanks being used. They're especially concerned for students who have some sort of issue with anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and special needs students.
I'm not opposed to the drills. I see this sort of thing for emergency preparedness. What I call into the question is the need for simulated gunfire.
Insanity.
The high school principal sent out emails to parents saying in part that the drill will include an alleged shooting in the building. In the email, he said blanks will not be fired at anyone. Now, some parents feel that the school officials should have provided more information about this drill. For example, some people that live nearby might react to the sound of this gunfire and to be concerned that it's actually real gunfire when in fact it is not. We are live in Bethel Park this morning. Amy Wattis, KDKA TV Morning News. A drill scheduled for
crazy. And this is what I mean. They're really trying to desensitize people. Get used to this craziness. Is chaos the new normal? This is the insanity that we have to deal with. But I think this is what happens as we move forward into the future, letting everybody else dictate to us what reality looks like. This is why I tell you guys all the time, prepare yourself. Don't shy away from these types of things. Understand what is happening. But we're going to be talking about this and more on the other side. Things like the operations that are going on in New Mexico, the satanic coming of age, and so much more. Like I said, the Christian persecution is taking shape in China. Don't go anywhere. Like I said, we'll be talking about this and more on the other side. You know, I genuinely do want to see people succeed. When I talk about this type of stuff, I know it sounds wild, I know it sounds out there, but I really am just, you know, doing this for everybody's best interest at heart. I'm speaking from a place of compassion, wondering myself, what in God's name is going on? Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Factions of Freedom. You see, I think I need to give people some context for why we touch on what we touch on, why we are the way that we are. You know, I really do want people to have the freedom to do whatever they see fit, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. I really would like to see people succeed, as long as, again, they're not hurting other people. I think people have the right to practice whatever they would like to practice. People have the right to be whoever they would like to be, as long as they're, again, not forcing it on other people. The things that we'll be going over in this edition, you know, things like these New Mexico jihadis, the satanic coming of age, Christian persecution, and all that. What we're talking about is how we're seeing the overwriting of doctrines. As I said before, the technocracy requires transhumans, and there's no room for religion in this world that they're creating. This is why I focus so much on spirituality and what it means to be human, is because they're trying to remove that. They're trying to have us only focus here on the physical realm of things, you see. And so to me, that just really, I don't know, that really, it really says a lot about this current state of affairs and where we're going. And if people don't realize the times that we are in, you know, these people are going to go, they're going to get away. They're going to get away with these types of things. And so I don't want that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the information. So, wow, a whole lot of things have been happening here in the state of New Mexico. So much stuff that I'm even having a hard time keeping up with it. You know, I'm talking to people around here locally about the whole, speaking of preparedness, about the whole New Mexico jihadi situation. This really is a way to look at what is happening to our country. So not only do you have Antifa out there causing chaos, but you literally have jihadis that have infiltrated us. There are Proud Boys out here, and there are Masons. There's all kinds of stuff out here that people don't really get. You know, you have to be here to sense it. It's kind of wild. But let me get into this article from the Free Thought Project by Matt Argerlist. It says the state of New Mexico has filed a lawsuit against Google and others for willfully breaking the law to exploit the collection of children's data online. We put this up September 17th. It says, as YouTube, Google, and Twitter crack down on peaceful channels, censor alternative media, and allow child exploitation videos to flourish, New Mexico has filed a lawsuit against them and several app developers for illegally collecting data from children under 13 without parental consent. According to UPI, New Mexico Attorney General Balderas said the companies are violating the 1998 Children's Online Privacy Act, COPPA, a federal law, by collecting and selling the data on children. Quote, these apps can track where children live, play, and go to school with incredible precision. Balderas said one of the insidious practices, quote, these multi-million-dollar tech companies partnering with app developers are taking advantage of New Mexican children, and the unacceptable risk of data breach and access from third parties who seek to exploit and harm our children will not be tolerated in New Mexico. Then they go on to name some of the places that are, some of the people that are in the lawsuit, things like Tiny Lab Productions, MoPub, AirServe, InMobi, PTE, AppLovin, Iron Source, and all that. The lawsuit comes on the heels of a study that showed 6,000 apps violate COPPA regulations. As the Free Thought Project reported earlier this year, YouTube was already found to be in violation of COPPA when an independent coalition of advocacy groups conducted their own investigations. The coalition is made up of groups including the Campaign for Commercial-Free Childhood, the Center for Digital Democracy, and 21 other organizations. With their complaint, the coalition alleges Google claiming YouTube is only for children 13 years or older, and it knows younger children use the site and still targets them illegally. According to COPPA, it is illegal for any operator of a website or online service or a portion thereof that is directed to children, or that has actual knowledge that it collects information from children from collecting, using, or disclosing personal information from a child unless the operator gives parents notice of its data collection practices and obtains verifiable parental consent before collecting the data. So basically, Google got caught again collecting data. And New Mexico was like, look, man, you're not going to do that to our kids. You're not going to do that over here, güey. No, you're not. A la verga. For people that don't know, I'm just saying, oh my gosh. It's stupid. Because these technocratic giants, digital mafia, they don't care who they have been. They don't care who they hurt. You see, data is more powerful than anything. And that's something that at the end of the day we really have to kind of really get down to. And so moving on, more stuff happening in New Mexico, the state of New Mexico. Stuff's popping. New Mexico jihadi's defense attorney says that if these were white Christians, no one would bat an eye. Now I'm black. So for the racists out there that are listening, you're listening to a black man. I'm sorry I crushed your paradigm. Now I'm looking at this whole article. I've been following this story, I think it was last week and the week before last were the only two. Nope, it was just last week. Yep, because we talked about it during overseas observations and assaulting cognition. Just last week was the only time that this story has not been in the news, and we've been following this. You literally have people out here who have been caught with dead bodies, children. They talked about literally sacrificing people for Allah, killing non-believers, raising an army. And, when you go back to us reporting on it at the start, some of the reports talk about how this child was literally ritualistically beat to become Jesus so that he could lead this army and attack government facilities and all this other crazy stuff. It's crazy. This whole thing is crazy. And you see them trying to cover it up so fast. Now, I have people, who get kind of testy because, it's talking about race and religion. These are two of the most controversial topics because it gets people so triggered. It gets them all up in their emotions to where they're not vividly seeing. They don't see what's going on here. We literally have a jihadi over here training to take on people. This is domestic terrorism. Let's get real. Let me get into this article. This is from Sons of Liberty Media. It's reported by Robert Spencer. We put this up September 17th. It says, quote, federal prosecutors say that between December 2017 and August 2018, the group, who were either siblings or related by marriage, had a common plan to prepare for violent attacks on government, military, educational, and financial institutions. Yeah, no one would care about this if they were Christian or white. And so, again, this is talking about race and religion. These are the two... I try to stay away from race on the page because it really does cause division. But what this defense attorney is doing with this hot potato is he's trying to throw it out as fast as possible. Quote, federal judge denies New Mexico compound residents bail by Vanessa Romo, KRWG, September 13th, 2018. A federal judge denied bail on Wednesday to all 5 members of an extended family accused of operating a training camp for violent attack on public institutions out of their isolated New Mexico compound. During the arraignment hearings, Magistrate Judge Kirsten Kosla told the defendant that there was, quote, a clear and convincing evidence that you are a danger to the community, the Associated Press reported. A federal grand jury indicted the group on Tuesday on conspiracy and federal firearm charges stemming from a discovery of a cache of weapons after law enforcement raided their home in search of a missing boy, but instead found 11 malnourished children living in squalid conditions. Federal prosecutors say that between December 2017 and August 2018, the group, who were either siblings or related by marriage, had, quote, a common plan to prepare for violent attacks on government, military, educational, and financial institutions. U.S. Attorney John C. Anderson and Special Agent in Charge James C. Langenberg of the FBI's Albuquerque Division said in a statement that the defendant's home in Amalia, New Mexico, served as a firing range and training camp to carry out attacks as part of a religious prophecy. According to the indictment, some of the minors were being prepared to, quote, engage in jihad and to die as martyrs. Siraj Ibn Wahaj, the lawyer, in the state case, suggested that those charges were motivated by a degree of racial and religious prejudice against his Muslim client. If the suspects were white Christians shooting guns on their property and practicing their religion, no one would bat an eye. So, this puts me in like a weird place. I'm not even going to lie. This puts me in a weird place because you have all kinds of white people out there, shooting guns and practicing all this other stuff. But, there's no evidence out there that's saying that this guy's trying to attack like government, educational, financial institutions and all kinds of other stuff. And if they are, it's crazy. And if there are people that are listening that are doing this type of stuff, you got to be a lot smarter than this. Like, this is just crazy. But my point is, by going over this type of stuff, we got some stuff happening here domestically, and people are trying their hardest to ignore it. They don't want to see what's happening because that confirms that indeed we have been infiltrated. That you could be potentially targeted for your beliefs. And that to me is sketchy. You have people out there waiting to be activated to go over these types of things, to carry out these types of attacks. It's crazy. The country is bigger than most people think, and there are a lot of pockets and a lot of areas for people to conduct these types of things. I mean, I could go on and on and on about some of the things that I have seen here that, actually involve what I would not that I would consider terrorists, but there is just some very strange stuff here. I mean, we got started covering Jade Helm 15. So if I'm already noticing this type of stuff, I can bet you that there are elements within our local government, our local, state, and federal government who are monitoring these types of individuals here. It's crazy. But another thing that has happened here in New Mexico, apparently there was a solar observatory closed, and it was over child porn. I think that's a cover-up. There have been images that have come out showing a massive object near our sun. Let me see if I can go ahead and get that article, get that one up beforehand, because that's way more interesting than them trying to pass this off as just, oh well, it's just it shut down because there was a breach in porn, or a breach in the security in the IP addresses because it came from a porn website. Now, last week a solar observatory closed out here in New Mexico. Mysteriously, it closed. There were security issues, and there are photos that have gone around. And for people who are audio listeners, what's happening right now is I'm showing you a slide from September 17th from Mysterious Universe and STHF Plan, as well as a photo from UFO Hunters that shows a massive black object near our sun. A massive black object. There are Black Hawk helicopters that went to the Sunspot Solar Observatory on Sacramento Peak in New Mexico. All right. On September 6th, it closed. They literally evacuated all of the occupants. Law enforcement didn't even know. They were just told, go get these people. All of this for child porn? That sounds to me like a cover-up. Let me look at this right here. We put this up September 20th. It's from the Free Thought Project that said earlier this month, the Sunspot Solar Observatory in New Mexico mysteriously shut down without warning and under a shroud of secrecy. The local police were not informed about the nature of the FBI investigation, which caused conspiracy theories abound. Then, on Sunday, a statement from the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy, ARA, the group who runs the observatory, suddenly released the reason for investigation, noting that it was criminal and that the site was closed over concerns for, quote, the safety of local staff and residents. ARA determined that moving the small number of on-site staff and residents off the mountain was the most prudent and effective action to ensure safety. The statement did not explain the, quote, criminal activity allegedly discovered at the observatory or mention anything about arrests. It then acknowledged how the secrecy and lack of communications while the facility was vacated was concerning and frustrating for some. However, our desire to provide additional information had to be balanced against the risk that, if spread at the time, the news would alert the suspect and impede the law enforcement investigation. That was a risk that we could not take, said the statement. Apparently, the risk was so great that the local police were even kept out of the loop. According to Alamogordo Daily News, Benny House, the sheriff of Otero County, said the FBI was involved in what was described as an elaborate shutdown process and said, quote, the FBI is refusing to tell us what is going on. There was a Black Hawk helicopter, a bunch of people around antennas, and work crews on towers, but nobody would tell us anything, House told the Daily News. However, Wednesday afternoon, this great safety risk to the observatory was finally revealed. and it was due to child pornography. According to a federal search warrant, federal agents began searching a child protection database and found child porn linked to an IP address at the Sunspot Observatory. Now that to me sounds like a cover-up. We literally got the answer right before we came onto the air. That to me sounds like the obvious indications of a cover-up. You're having blacktop helicopters, people being evacuated all over porn, being looked at work. I'm sure people do it all the time, unfortunately. And maybe because this is a very important government facility, that it has to go through these types of things. But it is wild to me that they let these types of things go on. No, I don't think it's just child porn. We'll see what it is, but I don't think it's child porn. Okay? I really don't think it's child porn. That's because it's not that it's popular right now. That's what's sensational. That's an easy way to kind of dissuade people. It's not child porn. We'll keep an eye on this as it develops. I think there is more stuff going on in realms that we can't see. And what I mean by that is space. But do your own research is all I'm going to say. It's not porn. It's not porn. But to switch gears, to talk about some of the stuff that's going on. I haven't done an occult world episode in a while, but again, to switch gears, there's some crazy stuff going on in New Mexico, no doubt. But to look at the doctrines and things that are going on here within the world and how that pertains, you're seeing people kind of shy away from, again, spirituality, what's going on. Religion is collapsing. The church is collapsing. We're having more faith in technology, Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, than we are in ourselves and in the church. And what comes with this is pride and arrogance. What I'm saying is we're living in a golden age of satanic coming of age tales. Now, Sabrina the Teenage Witch is getting a reboot over here on Netflix. Before I go into this, I think it's important, again, to highlight the fact that with 2016, we saw the surge, the rise, the crazy rise of Satanism. Now, for people who don't get why that's important, we're seeing this paradigm shift. The Satanists and the Luciferians, you got to understand, a lot of this stuff they say, oh, we don't do this. We're the good kind. No, we just practice this stuff for fun. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a lie. That's a joke. Okay? There are real Luciferians out there. There are real Satanists, and they are literally drawing power from people. Okay, why is the Pedogate phenomenon so important? Why is Pedogate so important? Why is Pizzagate so important? Why is spirit cooking so important? This gave us a literal window into how these sick people operate. I have a video later on where we're talking about how the clergy set up a sexual abuse hotline, and it literally got overflooded with calls. There is something going on within the Roman Catholic Church and religion itself that literally creates this kind of crazy dichotomy. I don't even understand it. And again, a lot of this comes from sexual abuse, operating solely in the physical. Our good friend Nate Max of the Gathering Momentum podcast from Innate Awareness, he recently talked to Fiona Bartnett. She was a satanic ritual abuse survivor. We've also talked to satanic ritual abuse survivors. So what happens whenever you have people, you got jihadis over here practicing to take down all kinds of installations. I'm sure you got racist white people planning to kill black people. You have Satanists demanding that Baphomet be erected. You have pedophiles within the church being exposed. You have Christians in China being killed, Bibles being burned. What is going on? It's like if you believe in anything, you're targeted. Why? Because there should be no other belief than the state. And what is another way for you to have your own belief, a belief in yourself? And that's what Satanists and Luciferians believe in, the power of the power of indulgence, the power of self. Not empowering self, but the power of self, the power of one. It's crazy. And at the same time, they're distorting some of these ancient teachings for modern day abuse. We've talked about it time and time again. The witches that bind Trump. Hashtag magic resistance. These people who are out there conducting rituals and casting spells daily. You don't understand. All right? Let me tell you this. You don't understand how there are Freemasons out there. You don't understand how there are witches, priests, poleros, and all these other people conducting not only rituals, workings, spells, and so many other things against so many different things. Like, it's crazy. I'm gonna say this and then I'll get into this article. I meant to do a minicast, an Instagram live, where I basically talked about that. The concept of the warrior priest, the battle monk, the combat medic, the war mage, the things like this. I know these all sound like video game terms, but the concepts are based in fact. Why did the Buddhists become so badass at fighting? It's because they literally had to fight for their faith. They learned how to stand up for what they believe in. Now, here's what's happening here in America. You have Satanists who are using the First Amendment, who are using politics to advance a very, very spiritual agenda. Look at the surge of members that have happened at the Satanic Temple. It's crazy. It is crazy, but let me get into this article. Clearly, this is something that I'm caught up on, and it means much more. We're looking at the depreciation of life. We're looking at the gradual societal collapse, and this is what's replacing it. I mean, look at, again, some of the other, look at what the Santa Muerte, look at what the cartel worships. Like, they worship the sin of death. They pray to death to ensure that their drugs get to where they need to. It is crazy. You have MS-13 out here sacrificing girls for Satan. It's crazy. And people say this is not happening. It's because they're practicing ignorance. My word. Let me get into this. I don't mean to ramble on about this type of stuff, but I don't think people really understand what it means. So yes, we are living in a golden age of satanic coming of age tales. This was put up September 14th. It's by Ricky Scaparo of End Times Headlines. It says Netflix debuted its trailer for Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Thursday, teasing viewers with glimpses of Baphomet, demonic rituals, pentagrams, spells, and more. Quote, "We are living in a golden age of satanic coming of age tales," Katie Rife of the AV Club writes. The poster for the series, released Wednesday, gives the titular character horns as the satanic icon Baphomet hovers behind her. Netflix says Chilling Adventures of Sabrina imagines the origin and the adventures of the Sabrina the Teenage Witch as a dark coming-of-age story that traffics in horror, the occult, and, of course, witchcraft. Tonally in the vein of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, this adaptation finds Sabrina wrestling to reconcile her dual nature, half witch, half mortal, while standing against the evil forces that threaten her, her family, and the daylight world humans inhabit. Quote, "The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina trailer certainly looks like creepy supernatural drama. Those close to the production have promised fans," quote, Screen Rant reports. Much of the trailer is made up of quick scenes showcasing various settings around town, including the Spellman Mortuary and Cerberus books. Further, the trailer teases the 16th birthday of Sabrina, which marks an important time in a young witch's life. But the celebrations aren't all fun and games, with multiple shots of various rituals and the demon that appears behind Sabrina in the show's poster. While some Christians quibbled with the first series, which was more hokey than horror, the new adaptation proves there is nothing to joke about with witchcraft. According to Refinery 29, in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Salem is a nondescript black cat without the ability to speak, but Salem's not actually a cat at all. He's Sabrina's familiar, a goblin trapped in the body of a cat, dedicated to protecting and helping Sabrina. The new Zelda Spellman is a nascent fashion icon, a Satan-worshipping queen, and absolutely terrifying in the best way possible. Otto is an Australian actor known for his stint as Eowyn in the Lord of the Rings series. So we're literally talking about how they're making it, again, trendy, fun, interesting. Hey, come be satanic with us. It's going to be interesting. Hey, come get some of this dark knowledge. Come get some of this dark enlightenment. You know you want to read the Necronomicon. This is what they're trying to push to people. This is what's become cool. You see, people don't understand how with this, again, comes the depreciation of reality, the depreciation of life. Whenever these wolves begin to see people as sheep, all they see is ways for them to feed. You see. And again, I don't think people get what that means. Like this for us, for regular day people, for the average Joe, for individuals who want to do good and want to see other people succeed and want to be happy. that just means you're going to be you're going to be taken advantage of. These people are wolves in sheep's clothing. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's to describe how people are today. It's to describe how, again, how people are interacting. We have people who are going around literally, I don't want to say practicing witchcraft, but as you've heard me say time and time again, they're playing host to energies and entities that they don't know. And when they do that, they become the vessel. So when they're carrying out these type of acts, when they're doing these types of things, they're, again, not doing it for their own benefit, but they're doing it for whatever is controlling them. And you've got to understand that some people are willing to be controlled. Now, to move on, because we'll get back to more of the religious stuff, I want to take a quick break and talk about this Kid Boo. Now, we put up his post the other day from Vlad TV where this kid's coming out talking about, oh, he's a second-generation clone. Cool, great. If people have paid attention to when we've talked about cloning, this also is another one of those things that indicates, depreciating life, not really appreciating where you're going, what you stand for, and all this stuff and more. Now, I said in my Instagram story as the comment regarding this kid, he's got that same zombified, dead-in-the-eye stare as a lot of people do these days. And what you have to understand is the music entertainment industry is satanic at its core. That, like understanding 9/11 is an inside job, is one of the prerequisites of this of this operation that we're doing here. But with that being said, I'm going to play for you this clip of this Kid Boo talking about being a second generation clone. Like it's just crazy to me. But let's take a listen.
Okay. I guess originally you were born in Jersey?
Yeah. Originally, my first gen. I'm a second gen now. That's why you see the celebrity bursts say I'm born in Toronto, but that's false. My first gen was born in Jersey. However, I was cloned by Clonate in Canada. My model number is 0112568, if anyone wants to see the registration on Clonate.
Okay. So then you ended up in South Florida?
Yeah.
Okay. And what nationality are you?
Sicilian and Puerto Rican.
Okay. Sicilian and Puerto Rican. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that now.
Those are my two genomes.
Okay. Well, who's the Puerto Rican one? Who's the Sicilian one?
When I was cloned, they wiped a lot of memory, but when I stole the documents before escaping, I read that the mother was Puerto Rican
and the father was Sicilian. So yeah, for audio listeners right now, I'm just playing this clip for you guys of this Kid Boo kid. Now again, just like with Colin Kaepernick, Nike, and all this other stuff, what we're talking about, what I just did right there, gave these people free publicity. Is it just that? Is it a free publicity stunt? Are they just talking about these types of things for free and for fun because it's interesting? I've talked time and time again about human cloning, and I won't use the rest of the time that we have now to go on and on about it. I would definitely urge you guys to go back and listen to our previous broadcast where we spent time on it. We've also done a Instagram questionnaire where people have talked about it, what it means for life, and more. Now, to bring it back to reality, what's going on with us, what's going on with society, you have to understand that these people are trying to, again, depreciate life, demoralize you. You see, it's clones, Satanism, robots. 2018 is wild. And play for you guys this clip. New hotline for clergy abuse claims flooded with calls. And for people who are familiar with clergy abuse or want to report it, that number is 855-363-6548. That number again is 855-363-6548. People need to get help, but people need to know that there are also things out there, and institutions are trying to get help. Pope Francis recently said that he called people who were pointing out sexual abuse within the Catholic Church, he called them megalomaniacs. He called them, he said that we're working for the devil. It's crazy. He is also practicing ignorance, ignoring this type of stuff. The systemic sexual abuse that's taking place within the Catholic Church, the extent of it, it's crazy. And the reason I'm prefacing this is because you're going to hear basically a grown man cry about how he didn't want to get raped again as a child. And there are thousands of people out there like this. There are thousands of people out there who have this same type of story, and it's sad. And what's even worse, here, before I play this, before I get into this, what's worse is a lot of this stuff is done by design. Now, I had mentioned how Russ Dizdar is doing a series on Project Pennsylvania. He's talking about some of the sexual abuse that's going on there. What a lot of people have to understand, and I would advise you to go listen to Ragged Edge Radio, shadowthedarkness.net with Russ Dizdar to get a full clarification on what's going on. What we're seeing right now is, again, just like the spirit cooking, just like the pedogate phenomena, Hillary Clinton's emails, we're getting a window in the operations and things that are going on. Now, this Kid Boo Kid talking about being a second generation clone, yeah, okay, we'll come back to you, boy. What I want to talk about is how we're talking about second generation, fourth generation, satanic ritually abused children. We've talked time and time again about things like MK Ultra, mind control, and as I said before, SRA, satanic ritual abuse. You can go look at now deceased head of the FBI California division. His name escapes me at the moment. It escapes me at the moment. I know his title and everything, but he too has also investigated the satanic rituals and how it's involved with the schools. We've talked about the Hampstead case, where they've talked about being a part of the satanic underground, the occult underground. This stuff is very real. So to get back to point, versus the second generation clone versus the second generation of people who have been victimized and occult ritualized by these types of things. You have children who have been victimized by this church, no doubt. You have old men that have been victimized by this church. You have people who are voluntarily signing up for these types of demonically inspired breeding programs. And what I mean by this is there is something in the spiritual biological component of man that happens with our spiritual nature. This is why we spend so many different episodes trying to understand it. Now, the Black Flame, the people who have infiltrated the church and who are conducting these types of things, it's Nazis. It's still those same Nazis from World War II who are carrying it on. They're trying to create just that, the Lebensborn, the Godmen, right? Again, Russ Dizdar talks about this. What he's trying to tell you guys is that they're creating this satanic breeding project to where they can create multiples, people who are part of this, again, satanic underground, who are part of this victimized culture. I know all of this stuff sounds wild. I know, and people don't want to think about it, but this is the darker aspects of the just that, of the pedogate, of the spirit cooking. You see what I'm saying? When you talk about Heinrich Himmler's Lebensborn, the Godmen, you're talking about the satanic chosen ones, the troops of the Antichrist, the people who have been through this satanic ritual abuse, who have been birthed by design. We've talked about demonizing conception. Look at things like Stranger Things. This is their way of literally trying to disclose this stuff to you, that they are indeed working with split multiples, people who have these abilities. Like, check this out. Stranger Things is them talking about Project Montauk, CERN, MK Ultra, and so much more, right? Ritualizing a fetus, dosing up a mother with so much LSD that she produces a child that's capable of psychic powers. It's crazy. And now we're talking about how Netflix is producing a show based upon what? Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the occult mysticisms and the satanic ritualization that's coming out. It's very real. Like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And all of this stuff spawns from just that. The article of them saying that they have a clergy sex abuse that's being flooded with phone calls is because this has been going on for years, for generations, for decades. In the studio here, I have a literal document that has been printed out from from the 80s of the Baltimore Police Department, where they were literally going out there they were coming across all these crazy crimes. Like, what is going on? What is happening? Why are people having these markings carved into their chests? What are these markings on trees? Why are these things burned into the ground? What is going on? The satanic panic of the 80s is coming back today. That's what I mean. Like, you guys have got to understand, this is crazy. It's crazy. And they're overriding it because it's trendy, because it's cool. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not inclusive enough to have a pedophile read to my child. I'm sorry, I'm not inclusive enough to let this type of stuff be openly practiced. You got to see how they're trying to play us to do these types of things. It's wild. It is really wild. So yeah, sure, we can get tripped up on Kid Buu being a second generation clone. What does that mean? That just means that life is getting to a point to where it's no longer sustainable. What does it mean whenever you literally have generational Satanists who are practicing this type of stuff? Generational Satanists who are growing up Satanists, who are growing up ritualized, who are growing up mind-controlled. And it's within the music industry, it's within politicians, it's everywhere. It's within the clergy, no doubt. This is what I mean. I've talked about it before, cosmological conception, where they're literally timing the birth, timing the rituals, timing the procreation, timing conception, all of it, to produce what they need. It's wild. It is definitely wild. This is dark side programming. Released in the 60s, released in the 40s, post World War II. Again, you have to look at where it comes from. What is the root of this? I don't need to put up all kinds of slides here to talk about this type of stuff, because we follow these people. You see, this is it blows my mind. It blows my mind to talk about this type of stuff, because you see how they're literally just growing, fighting, literally trying to I remembered it. It was Ted Gunderson, retired head of the FBI California Division. Ted Gunderson. Unfortunately, he's no longer retired. He's unfortunately passed away. He has also talked about how he has conducted his own investigations into schools, locations across the world, across our great nation, across America, who are practicing these types of things. Tunnels that are being dug underneath classrooms where kids are being taken. So when you have a lot of people talking about kids in cages, they're not understanding the depths of it, man. It's really, really wild. And I'm sorry, this stuff, this is stuff that I feel like people need to pay attention to. This isn't just something simple. We started out looking at stuff in kind of a, I wouldn't consider us Christian or anything like that, but we're very spiritual. We have Bibles here in the book, or in the studio. We have other books that are interesting to read here in the studio as well. I think people should be allowed to practice whatever they want. But I don't believe a practice. I believe this is an organized agenda unfolding. And we are literally right here watching it all happen. But I'm going to play for you guys to kind of wrap up this episode. I definitely didn't mean to go on this 30-minute rant about the Satanists and how crazy and prevalent they are. But it's imperative that we know these types of things. You trip out about these jihadis and about Antifa. What about these types of people? And now you have Christian persecution in China at its all-time high.
The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom says Christians in China are facing an alarming escalation of persecution. This week, Public Security Bureau police invaded and shut down Zion Church in Beijing. Moments before that raid, this sign appeared just outside the church sanctuary. Now it looks like this. PSB agents removed the sign. No church here. Members of Zion Church were not deterred. Although authorities closed their building, they continued to pray and worship outside in the street. Also this summer, other Christians throughout China have seen their churches closed or demolished. Government officials have arrested church leaders, they've confiscated and burned Bibles, and they're still removing crosses from atop church buildings. What in the world is going on in China, and why now? Well, here to provide some insights is Voice of the Martyrs radio host and spokesman, Todd Nettleton. So, Todd, is this something new or more of the same?
Well, we are seeing more persecution, or a higher level of persecution,
there's a couple of developments that have happened this year that I think contribute to that. One of those is in February, new regulations on religious affairs took effect all across China. And so we're seeing those regulations now being put into effect and enforced. We're seeing how that's being translated from the national government down to the provincial level and then to the local level, and how that's affecting churches. Another thing that affects this is the fact that in March, Chinese President Xi Jinping was essentially given a lifetime contract. He was renewed his presidency and was told that term limits are no longer applied to you. So he can essentially serve as president for as long as he wants. And one of his emphasis, even going back to his days as a provincial leader, was on controlling religious expression and controlling the church. And so we're seeing that what he put into effect as a provincial leader, now that he's the president of the entire country, that same emphasis is spreading from the national government level down to every part of China.
Why is it happening now?
Well, our Christian brothers and sisters in China are telling us that this is the worst persecution they've seen, even going back to the Cultural Revolution. And what's happening is that the government at the national level is trying to exert more and more control over religious expression. What we've seen in the last number of months is the government will come into a church and say, hey, why don't you take down that picture of Jesus in your sanctuary and put up these patriotic posters instead? Why don't you not sing hymns to start out your service? Why don't you sing some patriotic songs about the wonderfulness of the Communist Party? One pastor in Beijing not long ago was told by the government, they said, Pastor, we don't mind if you continue holding your services. We just want to put this camera on your platform looking out at the audience, and it's attached to facial recognition software so that we can tell who comes to church on Sunday and who's there and what they're doing and how involved they are. The pastor obviously said, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. And just last weekend, that church was shut down. Officials came to the service. They said, nope, you are closed. You cannot meet anymore. So basically, the national government is making more and more effort to control every facet of religious expression in China. And this is not only affecting Christians. There are tens of thousands of Muslims in Western China that have been detained, and they're also seeking to control religious expression by Muslims as well.
What impact is this likely to have on the church and Christianity in China?
The larger gatherings may stop for a while, may be put on hold, and we will see more and more smaller gatherings. One of the challenges for the church in that situation is, okay, if we're not meeting in one group of 400, but we're meeting in lots of groups of 12 to 20, we need a lot of group leaders. We need leadership that is trained and ready to lead those groups. And so leadership development becomes a high priority in that situation.
What can our viewers do about it?
You know, the first thing that we can do is pray for the church in China, pray for our brothers and sisters there as they go through this time of trial. And not long ago on our Voice of the Martyrs radio podcast, we had a guest, one of our workers who's very involved with the church in China, and I asked him how we could pray, and he gave what I think is a very insightful prayer request. He said, pray especially for the young people who are part of the church in China, because they've never faced this before. They've never been through this. Their parents and their grandparents have gone through persecution. They've seen how God sustains and God empowers and protects during times of trial and times of suffering. But these young people within the church, they haven't been through it. They haven't seen that. And so naturally, like many of us, they're intimidated. They're a little frightened by how are we going to deal with this level of persecution that we're facing. And so, secondly, we can have a voice, and we can have a voice to our own government officials. You know, a lot of the conversation between the U.S. government and the Chinese government right now is about trade. But we need to make sure that our government officials here know that we vote and that we care about religious freedom, that they should use their influence, and we expect them to use their influence.
Okay, Todd Nettleton of the Voice of the Martyrs, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gary.
Crazy. And this is what I mean. You know, we are literally seeing Doctrines being overwritten. We are literally seeing spirituality being smothered by the state. And this is why, at the end of the day, we have to become the warrior monks. We have to become these peaceful activists. We have to become these people who do not conform, who don't want that duality, who practice the non-duality and only want peace. And as we move forward into this crazy and uncertain future ruled by technocratic totalitarians, it becomes that much more ambiguous. However, that's all I really have for you guys. This is the battle on biology, automating society, and overriding doctrines. However, that's all I really have for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.
It's so fast, so fast, so fast, so fast. Nah, it's fake, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. It's not wise, not wise, no wise, no wise, no wise. Let it be who you want to be, to be, to be. So fuck it. You gotta do what you want to do.